from my quick Google search, he's done a few jobs around the place of ministry. He's got a few under his belt. He's currently working in communications and writing a fair bit for London City Mission. He was the first digital marketing executive for SPCK and IVP. His Twitter bio describes him as a theologian at large, which is interesting. So Tom, thanks so much for joining us. Would you introduce yourself just by saying a little bit about whereabouts you are and how lockdown/transition has been going for you?
Yeah, well, I should begin by saying that a key thing for publishing is making yourself discoverable and then making sure that the information is accurate. So I actually left London City Mission beginning of last year and started back at IVP in October of last year. So no, that's entirely my fault. You know, you've got to get these things right. It's basics; they're important. I should say IVP is a lot more competent than I am. So I'm the digital marketing editor at IVP, which is a kind of a weird role. And for those of you who know me, I'm a weird person, so it works. I do about half my time is spent doing things like this, kind of commissioning, encouraging content and creators. I've got a particular digital angle to that. So if any of you have kind of writing pitches for our blog, we'd be up for having conversations about that. And the other half is kind of the hard marketing stuff. So if you see an irritating tweet with the IVP logo next to it, that's me. If you see an irritating tweet with my name next to it, that's also me. And please don't get the two confused. But yeah, no, really excited to be with you. Really grateful to Nate for inviting me and Kristi for existing, because she's obviously going to say nice things about no. One of the great things about Kristi's book, More Truth, is that it illustrates a point that I really want to ram home, which is that publishing starts with really teeny tiny things and goes on for years. So it's a long-term game. I'm abnormal. I read over 100 books a year. We've done some research which tells us that most Christians don't. And so if you're going to write anything, whether it's a tweet, a blog post, or a book, you've got to think about who it's for. And I would say with my IVP hat on and actually with my kind of UCCF legacy, you've got to think about what you're saying. So we have the privilege of being a confessional publisher. We have the UCCF doctrinal basis, which is both not really narrow enough for me, but also far too broad. It's a fantastic doctrinal basis which helps us shape gospel-focused books, but also have some of the debates within evangelicalism. That's by the by. What I was going to kind of allude to was Kristi's book, very, very small, very, very good, very, very small. We also do slightly thicker books. So this book, if you haven't seen it and read it, then yeah, I've not done my job well. Sharon Hastings is obviously a woman. She's a doctor with severe mental health kind of problems. She's recently had her first child, but that's an aside. And she wrote this book, and she did a great guest post for us, which I could put in the chat later, about why she published with IVP, because she was an unknown. No one had kind of heard of her or heard from her. And then we accidentally published her, and we've been thrilled at the sales, but also the response, because it's a deeper book. It's a longer book, than Kristi's. Kristi, I'm really sorry, your book is incredibly deep, but it is quite short. And then we've also got the big kind of fat end of things. So the commentaries, the dictionaries, the kind of things which if they fall on your head, they hurt. If you've come out UCCF, then obviously Wayne Greedy of Systematic Theology is probably propping your desk up, or your laptop maybe sat on it. And so publishing has these kind of different strands. And at IVP, we try and do a bit of all of them, which means we probably don't do all of them as well as we'd like. To vaguely allude to a literary quote that I can never quite remember. But yeah, I'm a big reader. I love helping people work out what they should read next or even write next. So if you have any questions about the Christian book world, I did, as I say, used to work for SPCK, which meant I had to hold my nose quite a lot and kind of send apologetic emails to people at the Good Book Company, and 10 of those from my personal kind of address saying I'm really sorry about Richard Raw and others. I realise this is live, and I've made that position very clear on my own social media before. But yeah, books I think are fascinating things, really powerful things. We are a people of the book. The Bible is a collection of books which points us to a better hope, a better future, a better world through the name of Jesus. And so I would love to be part of any conversations anyone wants to be part of, which are kind of about the Bible, theology, hope, Jesus, and the intersection of those. Basically reclaim the word intersectionality, and then we can talk about publishing. That's probably all I want to say, because otherwise I'll ramble.
Great, thanks so much, Tom. My laptop is no longer resting on Bible doctrine, which it was, but instead on a collection of works by Emily Dickinson, because she was just the right height. It's interesting how I've gauged books over lockdown. Coming to Jonathan Carswell this time. Let's hope I get this one right. This man really loves books and has made me buy several books in the past by standing at the front of various conferences. Not made, but I felt like I really should. Works as the chief executive officer of 10 of those, and is wonderful at selling books and making sure books are available to people who know Jesus, people who don't. Jonathan, would you introduce yourself a little bit, please?
Sure. Yeah. I just drink a lot of tea, really. That's what I do, and I try and talk about books as much as I can to others. So I studied youth work at university, and I went to be a youth pastor in Northern Ireland. I did that for 3 years, and then as a hobby started selling books. First 3 books I sold were Vaughan Roberts, which I bought 1,000 of each. That was all that was left, and I sold them in 10s, and that's where the name 10 of those comes from. You had to buy 10 at the time, but now you can buy any number. The more you buy, the cheaper it gets. And our passion really is to get good books that hold to the Bible, read by as many people as possible. So we handpick the best books from across the publishers and sell them as cheaply as we possibly can, with the belief that books that point to Jesus change lives. There are so many books out there. There's about 500 new Christian books every month, excluding those that are published, that are self-published. So there's a vast number out there, and many of those aren't great. Lots of those will do people harm spiritually, and so we want to have a place that is selling the best from across the publishers, and then we make them as cheap as we possibly can. So I've been doing that. So it started as a hobby, and then 13 years or so we've been doing that. And I'm now in the US with 10 of those setting up over here. We have a publishing department which began by doing small, very accessible mass market books. So if you've read something like The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness by Tim Keller, that's one that we did, which started as a little email to a generic church contact at his church, and has taken off. And we do lots of those little mass market books. We wouldn't do the kind of big theological hardback tomes. And that's, I think, one of the tips that I would give to people is know your audience, but also know your publishers. Different publishers do different things, and the 3 that are represented here each publish slightly different things. And so as you send off your ideas to them, then you need to know what they publish and what they don't. I think my tips and advice for publishing for people, if you want those now, I think, is be praying about what you're doing. Make sure that God is in this, and then read lots. I think good writers are big readers. Practice, whether that's kind of writing a review for your church magazine, through to a blog post, through to a longer article, to whatever it is. Just practice, write as much as you can. Write what you're passionate about. So in a group like this, I would hope that a lot of what is being written about is what Nay picked up at the start. Point people to Jesus. If we're passionate about the lost discovering Christ, then write about that, if that's what you're passionate about. And then when it comes to your writing plan, I think you can tell when an author doesn't quite know where they're going, and it generally leads the reader to know where they are going, and it's not to the next chapter. So plan what you're going to write and keep going back to that plan. Summarize. I'd say, if you can't summarize your book in 1 or 2 sentences, you're not ready to write the book. If you can't summarize your chapter in 1 or 2 sentences, don't yet write the chapter. Go back to the planning. I talked about knowing your audience, knowing your publishers. Also know your market. What is out there? Are there 100 books on this topic already? Maybe there are no books on the topic. That might be for a good reason. It may just not sell. It may just be so niche that, so know your market. Are there lots of books? Are there not? Why not? And then review take on feedback from people that you trust, not necessarily just family members, but wider than that. Every author we publish, as all three publishers, every author is fallible, and you are too. And so you will need a good editor. You will need feedback and comments, proofreaders, etc., etc. Take on criticism. It will really improve your writing. And persevere. It is really hard work. J.K. Rowling was turned down 7 times before Harry Potter was accepted. Now, we do have to take that on board as well. If people keep saying no, it may not be the right thing to publish, but persevere. And that's where I'd go back right to the start of praying. If the Lord is in this, persevere. It's worth it. And then the final one, which we may have some questions on perhaps, but is about platform. You do need to build a platform. You write a book for people to read it. So you do need to get it out there. But a platform can also be very toxic. And so be careful. I had an email the other week of somebody wanting a commendation for a tract they've written. I think we kind of lost the plot if we're getting commendations for tracts. But you do need a platform to get the book out there. So anyway, a little bit of who I am, what we're doing, and some advice for what it's worth.
That's really great, thank you. I've already got some questions coming in. I'm starting to work out what we might do with this information. Let's go on to introduce our other 2 panel members, and then we'll have a quick moment of questions. Coming to Kristi next. I know Kristi from UCCF, but you've also been involved in Friends International and a host of other initiatives. Currently research fellow at Oak Hill. Author of a first book in 2019, that's when it came out, More Truth, swiftly followed by Healthy Faith and the Coronavirus in 2020. A Twitter bio reads, well, it needs translating, which I had fun doing this lunchtime, but it turns out it's a great quote. So thank you very much for educating me.
Very welcome, Katie. I think that was great. You've introduced me perfectly. I'm slightly saddened that Healthy Faith was so swiftly followed by More Truth. I think we'd all would have rathered that book didn't have to be written, but yeah. It's a pleasure to write that. And I have to be careful about what I say at some point, because not only is my publishing house represented in this conversation, but one of my editors, Tom Creedy's here too. So yeah, I look forward to sharing some tips with you later. Unless you want it now. Oh, Katie, you're frozen.
Looks like Katie's frozen. So if we could go to introduce, and then we'll have our first lot of Q&A, and then we'll go back to hear Kristi and Rachel's top tips. So Rachel, really warm welcome. Although unfortunately it was Katie that read up on your bio, and all about you is that you like avocados. Do you think you could possibly tell us about yourself?
Myself, don't worry.
I'm so sorry.
Yes, my name is Rachel Jones. I work as an editor at the Good Book Company. I've been here for almost 7 years. And so that has involved some writing. It started with these little books on praying for your church. It sort of culminated in a bigger book about the quarter-life crisis called Is This It? That came out last year. So yeah, love writing, very privileged to get paid to write. So I'm grateful for that. But the majority of my job is editing other people's writing. So the Good Book Company, we've got a staff of about 30 to 35 in the UK, and an office in the US, and partner offices in Australia and various other countries in fledgling form. So yeah, we publish a range of titles, mainly focusing on books for people in the pew. And our 3 kind of distinctives as a publishing company is that we want to be biblical, relevant, and accessible. So we want everything we publish to be based on the Bible, to be opening up the Bible and honouring God's word in the way that it's taught, not just sort of kind of proof texting with random Bible verses. We want everything we do to be relevant, so speaking into those questions and issues that the church is grappling with. And you know, that plays as well into our kind of design philosophy. We want Christian books to look beautiful. They don't have to look naff just because they're Christian. and accessible as well. So, you know, we want all the books we publish to be able to be read and enjoyed by everyone in the church family. So, you know, not assuming that you know your Old Testament very well, not assuming that you're kind of university educated. So those are the three things that drive us. We've got an editorial team of about 7 people here in the UK. So we work very closely with authors. We rarely take finished manuscripts because we really want to work step by step with each author, kind of helping them to develop their idea and develop their book. As Jonathan was saying, you know, the planning is so important, so we like to have a hand in that. So yeah, really a focus on kind of adding value editorially, so that the books that we publish are really the best that they can be, and so so they can be the greatest blessing to the church. So yeah, that's kind of what we're all about.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rachel. We have got Katie back. So Katie's going to ask some of the questions that have come in, and then we're going to hear a bit more from Rachel and Kristi, and maybe a bit more from Thomas as well. So Katie, over to you, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm back. Thank you very much. I think a question first for Rachel, perhaps, maybe Kristi. How do we plan writing? That's something that Jonathan mentioned. How did you go about it with the books you've written? And how would you suggest we start there?
So yeah, great.
Let's go to Rachel first.
Yeah, so I guess it starts with a lot of listening, you know, reading around the subject, listening to people. So when I was writing this book, what I loved most about it was it gave me this excuse to have great conversations with almost, you know, everyone I met at church, at weddings. You know, if you got near me, you ran for the hills, because I would soon be asking about all these issues. So listening well to people, really trying to understand what it is that people are grappling with, and then planning chapter by chapter would normally be the next stage. So you're looking for a single sentence that can sum up that chapter. It's very easy in many ways to kind of write a paragraph about what a chapter is going to be about, but it's much harder to just sum it up in a single sentence. So really honing your ideas, that you're clear on what's your big point, what's your big idea. I guess a bit like how you would go about planning a talk. A lot, you'd focus on one big idea per talk, and again, that's a good rule of thumb as a chapter.
I think Tom,
that's really helpful.
I think Tom would love to add to that as well.
Yeah, so I think good writing is out of the overflow of your heart, your mind, your soul, your life. I never set out to be a writer. I just really like reading books, and when I was about 18, started reviewing books, which is probably how I got my job the first time. And I would say planning your writing is really important. From the kind of the weekly, am I going to write anything this week? Is it a talk? Is it a Bible study? Is it a book review? Am I going to write anything bigger this month? In my case, it was, I might write a conference paper or a book review for a journal. In the course of a year, what am I going to write? And then beyond that, and I was talking to Kristi about this a little while ago, saying, okay, Kristi, you know, you're going to write 15 books, and then when you die, a bit like with Jim Packer passing away recently, there's going to be outrage and weeping across the evangelical world because you've planned out your ministry. Not to put any pressure on you, but that kind of, you know, where is this writing going? And it starts very, very small, like I say. What am I writing today? What am I writing this week? One thing that a friend has found, he's done a PhD, so that was obviously being paid to write for a bit because he was funded, was using National Novel Writing Month as a way to write, can I write a thing of however long? I don't think there's ever a problem with writing lots of words that you'd never use, because it's all part of the kind of the process. But in terms of planning, I would treat it like other things in life. What am I doing today, this week, this month, this year, and then a bit further ahead? Because hopefully, a bit like Jim Packer, we will finish our courses well, and we'll be able to look back and say, I've used my gifts. And so I would say, don't forget that older, wiser people than us, because I'm quite young and not very wise, have kind of planned, and in retrospect, they've done stuff in stages. And so I would look at planning a bit like that with writing. it's something you're called to do. Sorry, I just muted myself rather than saying that I'd finished. Nay, I apologise.
Shall I carry on now? We've got one more question on writing, then we'll move on to kind of how to get your book out. Just thinking about how to fit writing into life. A lot of us aren't paid to be writers. In fact, I don't know if any of us are. How do we go about starting to write? It's a great piece of advice to start writing anything to kind of get the practice in. But if you've got a book idea and you think you need to write it, how do you fit that in? Is it kind of an hour a week, an hour a day, an hour a month? I wonder, Kristi, do you have any ideas on that?
Oh, thank you, Katie. It's such a great question. I won't say too much.
She is, yeah.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I won't say too much on it at this point, as it comes in my top tips. But when I was writing More Truth, I'd just moved cities. I'd started my PhD. I just started teaching at Oak Hill, and the time was very, very limited for me. So literally, it was an hour or two in the evening that I just set aside to write that and to get it done. So I think sometimes when you think about writers, we think, they've got all the time in the world. It's this kind of idyllic situation in which you can really muse over ideas, and that's really important. But I think for me, I had to just kind of think, what am I saying? How am I going to say it? And then just get it written, and then trust that my editors and the people that I'd sent it to would give me really good critical feedback. So yeah, for me, it was in the evenings, the weekends, but I'll mention this later in my top tips, that trying to cultivate a lifestyle of writing, if that's something that you want to do, really helped me. So I've always kind of written something. I have my journals, my memoirs, as I refer to them. And so I write kind of 500 words, at least a day. And that kind of really helped me to enjoy it more and to cultivate a discipline to write, and hopefully to write well and to keep growing in that. So that's just a slight kind of teaser.
Great, thank you. We're going to head now to hear a bit more from Kristi and Rachel. So Rachel, do you want to go first, giving us your top tips in publishing? That'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I think there will be a little bit of repetition from what we've already heard, but that's kind of a good thing, because many counsellors make for good wisdom. So first would be to do your research. Within that, look at what different publishers are looking for. As Jonathan has already alluded to, not all publishers are the same. They all have slightly different emphases, and so their submission process is all different as well. So we have a submissions inbox that anyone can email into, and we have it very clearly on our website, that we don't publish poetry, for example. And yet we still get lots of poetry sent in, and then we have to say no to them, and it's just sort of needlessly discouraging for these lovely writers who are looking for a publisher. So do look at what a publisher publishes. Think about what a publisher can offer to you. There is lots of self-publishing options out there, and so but we think the Good Book Company still offers something distinctive to writers in terms of an editorial input and the kind of sales and marketing platform that we can offer to authors. But again, as you're doing your research and you're kind of honing your pitch, do think about what a publisher offers. They want to see that you get what they're about, and that that it's going to be a good gospel partnership together. If you're sort of on the same page in terms of what you're looking for and what they're looking for. And then again, books on the market, are there already lots of books out there on your sort of subject that you're thinking about? Again, there's that there might be room for another one, but it's really worth looking at what's already out there. What are they doing? What are they not doing? Are they, is there a particular audience they're not speaking to? Is there a particular approach that they're not taking? And really trying to think through how your idea is distinct or doing something different or better than what's already out there. So that's all sort of do your research. Secondly, kind of hone your pitch. So 3 great questions to ask as you sort of think through a book idea is, who's it for? The answer to that question is probably not everyone. A book that's for everyone in general often ends up being for no one in particular. And so really have in mind, you know, who's your bullseye target? Who are you trying to help with this book? And what are their felt needs? What are their questions? Yeah, those kind of things. And I find it really helpful as I write to have sort of specific people at church in mind that, and as I edit as well. And so, you know, if I write a sentence or a paragraph or even just like a choice of vocabulary, I'm thinking, you know, what would this friend make of this paragraph? Would this phrase be kind of, would that hurt them, or, you know, do they need this kind of application? So really having specific people in mind as you write is really helpful, and a kind of range of people is really helpful. So the first question, who's it for? What's it going to do for them? You know, where are they going to be when they finish the book? You know, there are many books and time is short, and so we have to work quite hard to persuade people that a book is worth their investment in sort of time and money. So where are they going to be at the start of the book, and where are they going to end up? And you're looking for something kind of positive there. And then, so who's it for? What's it going to do for them? And how's it going to do it? You know, how are you going to move people from A to B? What's the journey that you're going to take them on? So do your research, hone your idea, and then finally hone your communication. So we get excited at the Good Book Company about great writing. Great writing is partly kind of gift, but it's also a lot of graft. And just like speaking, you know, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And inviting feedback from friends and people you respect is really, really helpful. So as people have said, you know, look for opportunities to write blogs, articles, book reviews, Twitter threads, journals, church newsletters, you know, letters to friends, and get their feedback. And also look for opportunities to hone your ideas. You know, if you're at a speaking engagement, kind of talking on the topic, you know, what are the illustrations or the turns of phrase that are really resonating with people? What is it that makes people sit up in their seats? You know, what are the ideas that people are kind of, that people don't get? You know, what falls flat on its face, as it were. And talk to people. Great writers are great readers, but they're also great listeners. And so kind of absorbing the stories of others and writing in a way that speaks to them is really important. And just to encourage you that the Good Book Company have been, so when May emailed, you know, she pointed out that there's not a great deal of British women publishing at the moment. That's something we sort of saw a couple of years ago, and we've been really quite intentional about commissioning. So we're just about to sort of see the fruit of that labour. So coming up this autumn, we've got Amy Orr Ewing, Where is God in All the Suffering? We've got Linda Alcock writing on biblical meditation. We've got a lady called Jenny Pollock who's writing on contentment, and they're all coming out in the autumn. We've got Carolyn Lacey writing on hospitality in the new year. So just to encourage you that we do want to publish women, we want to publish British women, we want to publish first-time authors. And so if you've got a great idea and you're a good writer and you love the Bible, I mean that's the thing most of all, isn't it? That you want to help people to open up the Bible and speak grace into their lives, then we would love to hear from you. But yeah, those are the 3 tips. So do your research, kind of hone your idea, and develop your communication.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rachel. It's really great to get to know you, even if it's just by a Zoom call. Our final top tips are coming from the wonderful Kristi Mair, so I'm going to hand straight over to her, and then we'll go into a time of Q&A. So no question is stupid. We'd love all of your questions. And these wonderful people are here just to help you, to encourage you to get going in publishing. So please don't hold back. Over to Kristi.
Oh, thank you so much, Nate. It's such a joy being here today. I feel like a little bit of a rookie in that I've only got 2 published books, so the others all know so much more than I do, but I just thought I'd share with you a little bit about my own personal journey in writing, a few kind of practical tips, and just a few partial insights that really kind of served me well through the writing process. Some of this stuff Rachel has already mentioned, so I'll try not to kind of go over it too much. So for me, in my own journey with writing, it's probably not normative the way in which I came to IVP, and the way in which I was published. I mean, that's no least due to Tom's great support and Elizabeth and Ethan and others at IVP. But as been mentioned before, what really helped me was having kind of already giving examples showing that you're able to write in some capacity. So for me, that was, I know Elizabeth said that she'd listened to one of my talks, she read my blog, and so she kind of thought, okay, here's someone who might be theologically trustworthy, that we can see potential in. So if you're listening to this and maybe you're kind of just recording talks to your phone, or you're part of the PFE network and you're thinking, gosh, you know, I'd never even dream of doing this, do it, because God answers these amazing prayers in unprecedented ways. So I never thought that I would be a published author, and it's not about the end point in I want to get published, but how can I serve people through the particular passions and giftings and experience that the Lord has given me. So just want to encourage you with that. Practically speaking, Rachel mentioned this, I think read books and read widely, like read fiction. You can really tell, I think, I don't know if you found this, that when you read a good book, you can tell that there are particular authors who have such a high view of a well-formed sentence that it just kind of resounds with such clarity and with such beauty that it really lands the point that they're trying to make. So I found reading a few books, for example, there's Stephen King on writing, a memoir of craft. There's Madeline Longwell, Walking on Water, Reflections of Faith and Art, and Annie Dillard, The Writing Life. And these are all these amazing fiction writers, and they kind of just bring together, oh, hello, someone holding that up. Yes, thank you, Tom. They would just bring together their experience. For Stephen King, that's his book on Carrie. For Madeline, that's her trilogy, Wrinkle in Time, if you've come across that. And for her in particular, she shares how her faith has shaped her art. And I just really benefited from reading those authors, and that really kind of shaped my imagination and helped me to think, how can I write, if it's theology you're wanting to write, how can I write this clearly but beautifully while engaging the imagination as well? And just to name drop, my good friends, Luke Corley, like I see this in his writing, I see this in Andy Bannister's writing, I see this in Mark Mennell's writing. They have an appreciation for the English language that isn't about reducing it to formulaic propositional statements. And it's not that there isn't room for that, but it's more than that. How does this engage the imagination and the heart? So reading authors who do that well have really formed my own kind of creative horizons about how I can do that. And it's really hard work. So it doesn't just come by imputation, by reading the book, it's hard. I mentioned writing the 500 words a day. I got that advice originally from Mark Mennell. He just said, keep a journal, write every day. And he gave that advice to me a few years ago, and I've just loved that. That really does kind of exercise your literary and theological muscles, if that's what you want to write about. Also, I think cultivate curiosity. Like good writers are curious people, and you can kind of follow that kind of adventure, that thread of thought with them as they're writing. They're anticipating questions and then they're answering them really, really well. And for me, for my book, More Truth, that was continues to be not a massive struggle, but an ongoing way in which I'm receiving the Lord's goodness. Is what does it mean? What does it mean that Jesus says that he is the way, the truth, and the life? And for a long time, for me, that question, truth, how can I trust that the Bible is actually trustworthy, helped pave the way for me to then later write on it. It's as I moved into that question and that challenge that it opened up these opportunities for me to then kind of think through, how does this affect my relationship with the Lord, my relationship with others? And then the Lord might give you similar opportunities to share that with others. So what have been your struggles and opportunities? What are your big theological questions? Write them down, and as you explore them for yourself, there might be an opportunity as you synthesize those thoughts to then share it through a blog post, and who knows what might come out of that. Nay, Katie, I'm hoping you'll cut me off if I ramble on too long. Lean into constructive criticism. That's one of my hardest lessons that I've learned, actually, is that the first draft isn't always the last draft. I kind of, in writing, I circle in on what I want to say. So I went through, for Healthy Faith, I went through 6 drafts of the same chapter, and I rewrote 3 sections of it about 4 times. And it was just exhausting. In other areas of my life, if it's my doctoral work or something else, my first draft is usually my final draft. But with this, I just couldn't do it. Lockdown, all sorts of things, my own ineptitude, I just couldn't do it. So be kind to yourself, listen to friends, understand why you're saying what you're saying, and who are you trying to serve with your words. So on that, who can you send your drafts to for encouragement and for critique? So whose opinion do you trust theologically and stylistically that they will give you the compliment of truth as they read back on your work? So for me, there are a number of people like that. There's Nay Dawson, there's Tom Creedy, a lot of people who are here at the moment. There's also Luke that I mentioned. There's a close friend of mine at Oak Hill, Ed. His analytic skills are great. He was sum it up in an argument and sum it up in a sentence. And I'm thinking, gosh, I'm a philosopher. This is what I do for my bread and butter, but I just couldn't do it. I didn't see that in the chapter. And I found myself kind of slipping into this obscure academese just to try and prove myself as I was writing. So I think watch out for that. I'll mention that again in a moment. So again, Mark Mennell, Tom Roberts from Be Thinking, he's also on the board of IVP. And not only can they critique your work, but they can really encourage you as well in what you're doing. And that's one of the things that I've just greatly benefited from Tom in particular. You probably heard him earlier. He's such an encourager, and as is Nay as well. So having this kind of great group of people that you can kind of share insights, sharpen one another's work is great. I think C.S. Lewis did that, didn't he? The Inklings. So set up your own little group. And that just really increased my own confidence too. Rachel's mentioned the whole be clear on who you're writing for. If it's your first book, I found it helpful to chat with others who are a little bit further along. So as a first-time writer, when I wrote More Truth, there were things that I wish that I'd asked, but I didn't ask. And I thought that I'd be silly to ask because I'm a first-time writer, and they're obviously just doing me a favour by publishing me. So I think if that's you, and if you're at that stage, talking to people who are a little bit further along in the process can really help you clarify what's going on there. Okay, 1 more minute. Pastoral kind of things for me. Writing is profoundly exposing. I don't know if you found that. If you're giving a talk, even if you're writing a tweet, anything that you say is profoundly exposing, and there'll always be some kind of criticism. Don't look this person up, but there's somebody on Goodreads who gave More Truth a 1-star review, and I remember reading that and just feeling utterly crushed. Oh my goodness, who is this person? I started stalking them. Do they actually know what they're talking about? Etc., etc. And I overlooked the kind of the ample, excellent reviews in favour of zooming in on this one negative one. And so I think one of the big things for me is reminding ourselves that we aren't writing for approval. We already have it, we're sons and daughters adopted into God's family. And so we can work from a position of rest and not striving. Because I've personally found it paralyzing as I've been writing, thinking, what will this person think of this? Will they think I'm saying X, Y, and Z if I say it like this? But then this other person might read it and think that I'm not saying A, B, and C instead of that. So, I cannot write, none of us can write so explicitly as to rule out the possibility of misunderstanding. And if we are to say anything at all, then there is the possibility that we might be misunderstood. And in an abundance of clarity can lie a lack of clarity. So as you look at your writing, do you over-explicate? Why not? Do you insert too many wonderful but irrelevant stories to your main point? So just consider your strengths and weaknesses and how to cultivate that in your work. And just remember that whatever you're doing, whatever you're writing, you're doing it for the audience of one. Thank you, Nay. Sorry, I went way over my time.
That's really helpful. Thanks to all our panelists just for some really useful tips. It's given me lots of questions and lots of thoughts, and thankfully lots of people have written the questions that I had in the chat, so thank you very much. We'll see how many we can get through, so panelists, please be brief. If you could say your point in fewer words, that would be really helpful. We've got a whole range, so we're going to start, I think, with children's books. There's been a couple of questions just on children's genre. We'll start by asking Tom, but then others, if you'd like to chip in, do. Children's books often involve necessarily collaborating with others if you're not an illustrator, or if you are an illustrator and you're not a writer. How's the process for that? Do you kind of get in contact with a publisher first, or do you write something and hope for the best? So Tom, can you give us any tips on that?
So I became a dad at the start of lockdown, so the fact that IVP doesn't publish children's book is quite awkward for me. I would say that 10 of those, and Good Book Company supplying some excellent children's books. SPCK, with whom IVPA is associated, a story for another time, does do children's books, and the best children's books don't start with a cast iron idea. They're collaborative, so you get someone going, oh, I think I'd like to write about X, and then you find the right illustrator, that kind of thing. And I'm assuming, based on the excellent design of other publishers as well, that as with IVP, if someone comes with kind of, this is what I want it to look like, the publisher probably knows what the people who want the book needs to look like. So you need to be very, very open-handed with your idea, because if it's a good idea, we want it to succeed, but that might mean going, no, you can't just have loads of pink people. There need to be different colors or have more legs or whatever it is. So with children's books, be open to the publisher, find the right publisher. Different publishers will do different books for different children and different ages. The age thing is massive in children's books, because as I've learned, children are different at different ages. And so I would be really, really quick to offer, but very, very, very slow to kind of say, oh, I definitely need to look like this, because, as I say, Rachel or Jonathan will know what it needs to look like. So yeah, be slow and open with children's books, but they're really important as well.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tom. Rachel or Jonathan, do you want to add anything to that?
Not really. Just I'd underline, an illustrator comes separately to the author. Unless they're absolutely amazing, don't provide the illustrator yourself.
Excellent to know. Rachel, do you have anything?
Oh, someone's turned out the lights on me. Unbelievable. No, just the same. Send your writing, and we would normally source the illustrator.
That's really helpful, thank you. Moving on to a slightly different area, we've had a few different questions about platforming and things. We'll come to that in a minute. Thinking just through topics that are helpful to be writing on, I had one question on kind of how niche can you go? So can I write just for 16-year-olds leaving school? Would that be okay? But also how, I suppose this might be a question for individual publishing companies, how Lewis or Tolkien-esque can you go? Are you just interested in preaching, or a story's good? Kind of what's the range of things that we can be writing on?
Another niche thing, and just jump to another question which we might otherwise miss, which is Olivia's about specific learning difficulties. One thing I've discovered, the first book I commissioned is about the Lambeth conference, which keeps getting postponed. So the book keeps getting postponed. We've got 3 dyslexic vicars writing in it. The way they've written is they regularly preach, they very rarely write. And so they've spoken and I've transcribed, and then we've gone back and forth to create chapters. So if you've got specific challenges, then there are ways around that, but a bit of creativity is really important. So if you're already doing talks, that's a really good way to start getting there, but be prepared to be edited harshly. In terms of niches surprise us a lot of times. So one of my personal passions is disability theology. I thought that disability theology was very niche. It's not, it just isn't. And so if you think it's a niche, work out who that niche is, and then work out who's reading in it. And then start to talk to a publisher, talk to your friends, talk to your church leaders about who needs that book. So I didn't know I needed a book about grief of losing a partner early. I didn't lose a partner early, but a friend lost a partner at a young age. It turned out that someone had written that book. I'd never come across it before, but it's a book of losing a husband at a really young age. That's quite niche, but actually it's not, because it's a real lived experience. And so Janine Fair kind of brings biblical wisdom to that experience, which is seemingly a really niche topic. I hope that kind of makes sense. So there is nothing that's too niche, I don't think, but that may not be to say that any publisher will publish things.
Sure, thank you. Just to come back to that specific learning difficulties question, does anyone else have any thoughts, tips on that, on how to get writing? It sounds like quite a few people are suggesting writing as a team, actually, anyway, with people helping read through, sending back ideas, helping the edit process. Any thoughts on anything that would help getting going and writing something slightly more lengthy?
I would go back to the first point I raised of, bringing this to the Lord and praying through your project. I'm dyslexic, and there are dyslexics who've written books, no doubt. There's lots. And but equally, it may not be the right thing for you to write a book. It may well be. And if you work hard at it, I think dyslexics are often the most creative sorts of people. They think outside of the box, which is super helpful. But if you struggle to get what's in your mind down your arm onto paper, being an author may not be the right thing for you. And that is okay, because I can't remember who it was. I think Kristi, so helpfully, we are not doing this for approval from other people. God may want you to do something else. He may want you to write, but I think we need to be open to that may not be your thing as well.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. This has to be about bringing this to God, doesn't it? And has to be about doing what he's asking us to do and being open-handed with what that task is. Coming back into that kind of niche topic, I wonder if Rachel, you could give us an idea of the range of books that the Good Book Company deals with. Are we able to write novels for you?
You're not currently able to write novels for us, yeah, no. So no, I should say no. You can't. That's like one of my personal pet things. Drums.
Oh, sorry.
I think fiction would be great, but so we're kind of Christian living titles, things for people in the pew, and children's books. We do sort of all ages, kind of expanding the range of ages we're doing. So yeah, how niche is too niche? For us, we cost all our projects quite carefully. It is publishing is a big investment. We don't get any money from anywhere other than book sales, so we do have to break even on most of our titles. Sometimes we do books that we know aren't going to break even, but we want to make sure that those are ones that are filling a real need. So yeah, if it's very niche, but it is going to do some really important ministry for a really important group of people, then I wouldn't want to write that off as a possibility. That may well be something we could help with, but yeah, I don't know, it's hard to measure, isn't it? But sometimes niches are bigger than you think. And with Is This It, we did sit around and we said, are young people going to buy books? And we're like, is reading dead among 20 somethings? But the sales have been strong and have proved that that was a kind of niche worth targeting.
That's great, thank you. I really
jump in on the niche thing. I think from a 10 publishing point of view, and every publisher is different. All three publishers will be looking at, okay, well, how many is this going to sell? And like the Good Book Company, our only source of income are the sales of books. And so books do need to return. And though it's very easy to publish in many ways now, it's harder than ever before to sell books because there are so many. And so books do need to return value. If we're going to continue in our ministry, the books have to sell. Very practically, I think, I don't know, the other two could talk about their publishers, but you're going to have to sell sort of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 plus for it to be financially viable. For the time that goes into the writing, the work that goes into it, the design, the marketing, the proofreading, etc. And maybe that's helpful or not, I don't know. But for us as publishers, I would imagine it's a similar sort of number. If it's going to sell fewer than 3,000, it's going to be a special project if it goes ahead. I don't know, the other two might want to speak differently, but that would certainly be my opinion.
Any more final thoughts
Yeah.
on niche before we move on?
Jonathan makes a really good point about the commercial aspect. Although I'd push back and say with some things you can do as few as 200, they're just really expensive. So if you're a specialist, say you're a historian, and you have written the history of Billy Graham from the perspective of his secretary, that's quite niche, it's historical, but there will be some people who want to buy it. So it might be that we do a kind of a fancy hardback. So a quick response to Karen's question about history. History is really important. Just historically and on niche, and another thing that we've not named, the issue of race, which probably everyone's seen 1,000,001 books about this. It's really interesting to me as kind of someone who's not that old, but acts like an old fogey. The IVP did 3 books on race at the start of the 2000s. One's a biblical theology on race. Did you know that the first John Piper was a black slave, not the guy that we know about? And then this book, which is about racial unity within churches. Race was a niche when we published those books. It turns out we kind of need to talk about it as a church. So it may be, and I say this with my charismatic hat on, not my professional hat on, it may be that the Lord is speaking to you in a niche saying, you need to start writing about this, because in about 15 years' time, it's going to be really handy that book was published. So what might be a niche now, and that's partly a timing thing as well. So yeah, I think there's a lot happening around race at the moment, but I would encourage you, even if you want to write a controversial book about a controversial topic, publishers might be interested. And if you're the only person who knows about AI sex robots, I had a girl in my small group did a dissertation about sex robots, which is something I know nothing about. When I was asked by someone else, what's the Christian view? I was like, I don't know, but I know someone who does. And that's all a book is. It's recommending the person who knows the stuff to show you what to think about. Yeah, so that was my niche comment, which got pretty weird. I do apologise.
That's really helpful, thank you.
Can I also speak about platforms? Sorry, because I have a personality deficit whereby I have no respect for people, really. So I walk up to people who you're not meant to talk to. So like Justin Welby, I got a selfie with a thing because I wanted to ask him why he was doing certain things in the Church of England. Not everyone's created in that way, and so particularly, I think, and this might sound terrible, particularly for women who are godly, being on a platform and trying to build your own platform is really hard. And so I would look at the people who do it well. Kristi is quite good at it. Rachel is pretty good at it. My little brother loves her book, which he discovered randomly. And so I would say, find the people, as Kristi said, who are further on than you in the spaces that you're inhabiting, and that'd be different for different kinds of churchmanship, and just ask them. The worst that someone who's senior can say is, no, I'm too busy to talk to you. But I think something beautiful about us all being adopted and all being part of God's family is there is no real difference between me and Jonathan, even though he's the CEO and my triangular position's in a different place. I might not, be able to get his time at a conference because he's probably arranged meetings, but I'm sure if I went and said hi, he would give me the time of day. And that's a really important thing about Christian publishing, that we are a family. There is a family, which is different necessarily to more secular publishing, which I could talk about, but probably won't. Sorry, that became rant.
You've taken us on in the right direction. My next question was going to start with Kristi, but then Rachel and Jonathan, do feel free to chip in afterwards. How do we go about building platforms but not empires? How do we deal with our hearts in that situation? I've got an idea for a book. I don't know if I need to start on Twitter. Do I have to have a Twitter account? I don't really like it. Can I just do it all through Instagram? Do I have to start, I don't know, a blog? Do I have to do a podcast? There's so many ideas and so many ways of doing this. Any thoughts on direction that could help us and help us keep our hearts healthy during this as well? So start with Kristi and then Jonathan and Rachel after.
Oh, this is such a great question. Gosh, I'm not sure where to start with that. I'm not a massive fan of social media, so I'm on Twitter because because of my time with UCCF. I'm on Instagram because of my time with UCCF. If I could do it all over again, I'd love to not be on social media, but also I think there is a blessing to it as well. There are thistles and thorns, but there's also a wonderful side in which I'm able to connect with people that I would no way be able to connect with without it. So I think for me, when I'm talking about more truth or healthy faith, my personality would be one that I wouldn't want to self-promote. Like, I would not want to send that tweet. So maybe it's kind of asking yourself, are you one who wants to promote, and why are you wanting to promote? And if you're one that doesn't want to promote, why aren't you wanting to kind of share in a godly way about it? Both are instances of either inverted or inflated pride, aren't they? So I think for me, I kind of set it within the framework of thankfulness, in terms of this is what the Lord has given me and I'm really grateful for that and I'm going to rejoice in that. So I kind of share it in I'm really thankful for this and for this about this book, and I try and cultivate I guess a culture of thankfulness. So I'm not just talking about my book, I'm kind of talking about this thing and this other thing and this other thing. So hopefully when you go down my tweets, even though recently under lockdown it will look very different, you'll see kind of a range of things and different topics and issues that are being kind of promoted there. Yes, I think ask yourself about that. Where is that going and why? And the thing is, that can come across as false humility, can't it? Like, I'm so thankful that the Lord has given me this opportunity to do this amazing thing. But at the end of the day, yes, we want to be above reproach, but again, you can't say anything without being misunderstood. So I think having people who are, I've got some wonderful friends who are listening right now, like Tim Dennis and Becca Sweet and others, who will kind of read what I'm doing and giving them the permission to kind of tell you, oh, that didn't come across very well, or what about this? And we'll get it wrong. So I guess don't be afraid to fail and give it a go. So I think that would be my kind of first thought on the godliness issue, would be, yeah, where does your own heart naturally lean? And how can we give thanks to God for what he's done? And I think also having like a great, asking your friends, like often your friends will just naturally promote what you're doing anyway, and they'll be the ones sharing it. So I find it much easier to retweet than to tweet. But again, that's my own heart issue, and that's my own sin that I don't want to tweet. So that's something that I'm continually kind of working through. So I'll leave it there and I'll let others talk about the social media platforms.
Really helpful, thank you. Rachel?
Yes, this is a little bit beyond my immediate area. I guess there's probably wisdom in choosing one thing and doing it well, rather than, you know, having multiple accounts on multiple platforms and doing none of them particularly well. And thinking about where the people you want to reach are. You know, if someone came to us with a book for mums, say on parenting, and they don't have masses of Twitter followers, well, but they do have Instagram, you know, that would fit better on Instagram, and that's probably where we would concentrate our promotion, as opposed to Twitter, that, you know, tends to be more, you know, political or whatever, you know, a bit more newsy. So yeah, think about who you're trying to reach and where they are, and probably choose to do one thing really well, as opposed to trying to do everything not very well. In terms of the godliness thing, like, that's a constant struggle, and definitely been convicted many times, but yet never enough. You know, even this you know, a couple of months ago, just you know, 1 Corinthians 13, you know, if you're speaking without love, then you are just a noisy gong and a clanging cymbal. And there's definitely been times when I've written without love, and your writing is just, you know, clanging. So yeah, constantly praying as we sit down to write, and as we promote, that we would be people who are seeking to love others with our words and not exalt ourselves. But definitely very hard to get the right balance.
Yeah, I think it is a real tension. We write because we have a message to proclaim. And so it would be silly then to kind of hide it under, to mix all the sort of metaphors and examples, but hide it under a bushel then. You know, if we're writing to make much of Christ, then we should naturally and correctly want to then get that book out as far and as wide as possible. But, you know, he must increase and we must decrease. So it is all about pointing to the Lord Jesus. And, you know, there are numerous places in Scripture where you can go to kind of be reminded of, actually, this isn't about the applause of men. This isn't about seeking approval by our crowd. Actually, the Bible says, woe to you when all people speak well of you. So this isn't about making much of us. It is about making much of Christ. And so I can't go back to what I said at the start. Bring it to the Lord and say, look, this isn't about making a name for myself, but I want this message about you to go out. So would you make that possible? And it's a great story of Corrie ten Boom, who she used to, when people came to sort of compliment her or thank her, she used to collect it as a rose. And at the end of every day, she'd give the Lord a bouquet of roses. And I think that's the model we've got to have of, I'm going to shout out about this because I want to proclaim Christ, but it is him we're making much of, not ourselves. And that is a really hard tension in a noisy social media world.
Jonathan, thank you so much. Rachel, Kristi, Jonathan, what's your last kind of giveaway tip for us? Sadly, we've lost Tom. Kristi, what's your final tip for us before we say goodbye?
Sorry, I think it would be continue enjoying Jesus. Good writing flows from our relationship with him. So yeah, just enjoy him and trust him and pray big. And I look forward to seeing what will come out of it.
Thank you, Kristi. Rachel, how about you?
Totally that, but also I love this quote from Dr. Seuss, which is that the writer who breathes more words than he needs is making a chore for the reader who reads. Yeah.
You need to get your novels somewhere, Rachel. Jonathan, any final tips from you to us?
Yeah, just make much of Christ. He's the one that we love, and he's precious, and he's the one who saves. And so for a group of women who are passionate about evangelism, make much of Jesus.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, really big thank you to all our panelists and to Tom as well, who's left us. Thank you so much to Katie Shaw for co-hosting with me. We're really grateful that you've come today. This isn't just a workshop to come listen to. We want to see change as a result. So if you feel like you want people to read drafts and to encourage you, then there are women in Passion for Evangelism that would love to do that. So just get in touch with me. If you're not yet part of the Passion for Evangelism network, then have a look at PF Women on Facebook. I've just put it in the chat. And John and Rachel, do you mind putting your email addresses in as well, or an email address where people can contact you with book proposals? I think Tom's put his in already if you've not seen that. But thanks so much for coming today, everyone. We were praying beforehand that this would really start you on a journey where you could begin to speak and to write. And I feel really strongly at the moment that there's obviously a female voice in the Bible. And my question is, where's the British female voice gone in publishing work? And so we'd love to encourage you in that. So please just get in touch. But that's all for us for now. Enjoy your summers. And thanks so much, Kristi, Rachel, Jonathan, and Tom. And we'll see you all again soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.